or breathe, or hunger. But as I stood in that chamber, the air thick and cold as a tomb, every instinct screamed otherwise. The walls around me seemed to pulse like the slow, deliberate beating of a heart I could neither see nor touch. Shadows curled and stretched, twisting into faces I knew too well, my sister's smile, fractured by pain, the hollow eyes of lost friends, the echo of ghosts from my own past. The house that dreamed was no mere building. It was alive, and it was watching me. Maya's voice crackled over the radio, a tremor threading through her usually steady tone. "Elliot, the readings, there's something wrong with the sensors. The hallway outside is stretching. Colors bleed like wet paint. It's like reality is melting." I could hear the disbelief, the trembling edge in her voice as she struggled to reconcile science with the impossible. I tried to keep calm, but the oppressive atmosphere clawed at the edges of my mind. Jonas was silent, his usual vigilance replaced by something raw and unguarded. When I found him, he was gripping a broken chair leg like a weapon, eyes wild and darting. "It's changing," he muttered, voice low and rough. "The corridors, doors vanish and appear. And then that thing, the figure from my nightmares, he's here." Jonas's confession shook me. The house wasn't just warping walls. It was dragging our pasts from the shadows and molding them into weapons against us. I wanted to tell him to stay strong, to hold on to what was real, but my own resolve was crumbling. Leela was barely holding herself together. She sat huddled in a corner, sketchpad in trembling hands, candlelight flickering against her pale face. Her mediumship had become a conduit for the manor's whispers, soft, urgent voices brushing her ears, demanding she see the truth. The house fed on us, on our memories, our fears, our pain. She looked up, eyes wide and haunted. "It's alive," she whispered. "It's hungry, and it knows us better than we know ourselves." The house seemed to respond to her words. The temperature dropped further, breath freezing in my lungs. The walls groaned, shifting imperceptibly, as if drawing closer. I could feel it probing my mind, sifting through my memories, my regrets, searching for the fractures to exploit. In the midst of this nightmare, I found myself alone once more. The others scattered, each trapped in their own hells, conjured by the manor's malevolence. The line between self and house blurred. I saw my sister's face in the flickering shadows, heard her voice calling me, accusing me, forgiving me. The house whispered secrets, promising release if I surrendered. But surrender was not an option. I clenched my fists, forcing the memories away, grounding myself in the present. This was no longer just a place. It was a predator, and we were its prey. If we were to survive, we had to understand it and fight back. The manor's revelation was a turning point, brutal and intimate. It had stripped away our illusions, revealing the raw core of our fears. We were isolated, fragmented, vulnerable. But knowledge was power, and now, more than ever, we needed to hold onto that fragile thread. Outside the chamber, faint sounds echoed a scream, a whisper, the scrape of something moving just beyond sight. The house waited, patient and cruel, ready to consume whatever remained of us. I steadied my breath. The fight was far from over, and somewhere deep within, I feared the house was already winning. The oppressive air pressed down like a physical weight as I moved through the shifting corridors. The house's heartbeat pulsed through the floorboards, each step echoing against walls that seemed to breathe and pulse. I caught a glimpse of Maya up ahead, her camera flickering with static and distorted light. She glanced back, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. "Elliot," she whispered, voice barely audible. This place, it's not just playing tricks, it's alive. It knows us. It's using our memories against us. I nodded, swallowing down the lump in my throat. We have to find a way out before it breaks us completely. Jonas appeared beside me, breathing hard, eyes scanning every shadow. I confronted that figure again, he muttered. The one from my past. It wasn't just a hallucination. It was real part of the house. It wants me to crumble. Leela's voice trembled over the radio. I'm trying to hold the visions together, but it's overwhelming. The house is feeding on everything, our fears, our pain. It's insatiable. Dr. Marx's skeptical tone cracked for the first time. I don't know what to believe anymore. But whatever this is, it's beyond anything I've studied. Samir's frightened voice cut in. I don't think we're going to make it out if this keeps up. The manor's walls shifted again, the corridors warping in impossible angles. My own journal, my anchor to reality, felt fragile in my hands. The entries blurred, words twisting and changing. The house was rewriting our story as we lived it. I forced myself to breathe, to focus. The house was cunning, feeding on our memories, our fears, our doubts. But it was not invincible. Somewhere in this labyrinth was a weakness, a crack in the facade. We had to find it. The house waited, silent and patient, but so did we. And I vowed we would not be its next victims. The walls no longer felt like mere stone and wood. They were living, breathing entities, twisting and turning with malevolent intent. But despite the dread gnawing at our minds, we couldn't surrender, not yet. We had to try. Desperate measures, that was all we had left. We gathered in the largest remaining chamber that hadn't yet succumbed to the manor's labyrinthine distortions, a room cluttered with the equipment Maya had managed to keep operational against all odds. The flickering glow of monitors cast ghostly shadows over our faces, each of us marked by exhaustion and fear. Maya crouched by a tangle of wires, her fingers deftly adjusting dials and patching connections, her eyes sharp and unwavering despite the strain. If I can amplify the electromagnetic readings, she explained quietly, maybe we can map the shifts in real time, detect where the walls bend before they trap us again. Jonas stood by the doorway, broad shoulders squared, eyes scanning every inch of the darkened hallway beyond. His presence was our barricade against whatever specters or hallucinations might seep through the cracks of reality. Samir hovered near Maya, clutching a portable generator, his nervous energy palpable but contained. Meanwhile, Lila sat cross-legged on the cold wooden floor, a stark contrast to the technical chaos around her. Her long, dark hair spilled over her pale face as she closed her eyes, murmuring incantations or prayers under her breath. The air around her seemed to thicken, charged with a presence we could not see but all felt. Shadows flickered at the edges of the room, dancing just beyond the reach of the weak light. I can feel it, Lila whispered, voice trembling. The house is watching, waiting. But I can push back just a little. Her mediumship was fragile, a thread connecting us to the unseen currents that pulsed beneath the manor's surface. It was a risky gambit, but one we had no choice but to take. I sat apart, journal open on my lap, the pages worn and fragile under my shaking hands. Every entry, every scribbled observation was a lifeline to my own sanity. The manor had already twisted some of my notes, words rearranged, sentences altered. It was as if the house was rewriting our memories, trying to erase our pasts and replace them with its own nightmare. We have to keep recording, I said, voice hoarse but resolute. If the house is changing our memories, our perceptions, then this journal is all that ties us to the truth. Maya glanced up, eyes meeting mine. I've set the devices to log continuously. Any spatial anomalies, any changes in electromagnetic fields, if we can capture it, maybe we can predict it. Jonas cracked his knuckles, stepping closer, and I'll keep watch. No surprises on my watch. The plan was fragile, a patchwork of hope and desperation, but it was the only way forward. As the devices hummed to life, the mana responded immediately. The temperature dropped, icy fingers creeping along our skin. The flickering lights dimmed, shadows lengthening until they seemed to crawl and pulse with a sinister life. The walls groaned a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the floor beneath us. Lila's murmurs grew louder, her body tense, eyes squeezed shut. Suddenly, she gasped, jerking upright. "They're here," she said, voice barely a whisper. "The memories, the pain, they're coming." From the corners of the room, shapes emerge, shifting forms that flickered like smoke. Faces, twisted in anguish, appeared and vanished. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, a primal terror clawing at my throat. But I forced myself to breathe, to focus on the journal in my hands. "Remember who we are," I told the team. "Remember what's real." Maya's fingers flew over her equipment, eyes darting between the screens. The readings there spiking. The house is reacting to Lila's presence. Suddenly, the walls rippled, as if a stone thrown into a still pond, and the room shifted. Furniture groaned as it twisted, the floor tilting beneath us. Jonas moved instantly, grabbing my arm to steady me. "Hold on," he warned. The mana was fighting back. We braced ourselves against the assault, Maya desperately tweaking her devices to maintain the signal. Leela's voice rose in a chant, a desperate invocation against the encroaching darkness. I gripped my journal, tracing the words that anchored me, trying to drown out the whispers that threatened to unravel my mind. For a moment, the chaos paused, the mana's hunger suspended. We exchanged looks, fragile hope flickering in the gloom. "We're not beaten yet," I said, "but this is only the beginning." The house waited, patient and cruel, reshaping itself around us. And we, fragile and flawed, stood defiant armed with nothing but faith, technology, and the raw human will to survive. Yet, deep down, I knew this gambit was a double-edged sword. Every challenge we posed would only stoke the mana's hunger, its malevolent intelligence growing sharper, more merciless. Our desperate measures were a beacon, shining briefly against the all-consuming darkness. But the question lingered, chilling and unanswered. How long could we hold that light before it was swallowed whole? The night stretched on, each second a battle against an invisible foe. And as the mana's walls shifted once again, I felt the fragile tether of reality strain tighter than ever before. Every step we took echoed with a hollow resonance, a reminder that this place was no mere structure but a living, breathing entity, one that fed on the dark corners of our minds and the fragile threads of our sanity. Jonas was the first to break the silence. His usual stoic demeanor cracked as he paused in a shadowed hallway, the faint glow from his flashlight barely cutting through the oppressive gloom. His breath came in ragged bursts, visible in the chill that pervaded the air. "I see him," Jonas muttered, voice low and rough. "That bastard from the war. The one I couldn't save." We gathered close, the others' faces pale and tense in the lantern light. ID watched Jonas suppress his demons for weeks, his aggression barely masked beneath a veneer of control. But here, in this twisting labyrinth of memories and fear, the house had peeled back his armor. The corridors seemed to stretch and contract as if alive, walls bending subtly out of sight. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a spectral silhouette, clad in the grime and fatigue of battle. Eyes hollow but accusing, Jonas's hand tightened around his weapon, knuckles white. "You left me," the apparition whispered, voice a ghostly rasp that chilled my very soul. Jonas swallowed hard, his jaw clenched. "No, I didn't." The figure's form flickered, a wavering spectre born of grief and guilt. The manor's influence was at its peak here, manifesting his trauma in cruel, tangible form. For a heartbeat, I feared Jonas would falter, consumed by the weight of the past. Instead, something shifted in him, a fierce resolve ignited behind his eyes. With a steadying breath, he stepped forward. "I survived because I have to. For them, for all of us." The apparition dissolved into mist, leaving a silence heavy with release. "That was something," Maya said quietly, wiping sweat from her brow. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the dials on her recorder, the equipment crackling with interference that no earthly explanation could account for. "This place is messing with our heads and machines," she added, eyes flicking nervously to the screens that displayed static and fleeting shadows. I nodded, flipping open my journal. The pages were a refuge, a fragile tether to reality as the manor's malevolence pressed in. But even my writing felt tainted. Words shifted and warped, as if the house sought to rewrite our very memories. "We need to hold on to something real," I murmured. "Our experiences, our truths." Lila sat nearby, her slender form curled against the wall, pale and trembling. Her sketchbook lay open, pages fluttering despite the still air, capturing the flickering images of past victims and unspoken horrors she saw in her visions. "It's getting worse," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Their pain, it's all around us. I can feel it, hear their screams in the silence." Samir, clutching his baseball cap, swallowed nervously. "How much longer can we keep this up? The manor's not just playing tricks, it's trying to break us." Dr. Marks adjusted her glasses, skepticism giving way to concern as even she could no longer deny the palpable dread that thickened the atmosphere. "We've crossed a threshold," she said grimly. "This house isn't just haunted, it's alive, and it's feeding on us." The realization settled over us like a shroud. The price of survival here was steep. Each moment spent within these walls demanded sacrifice. Our fears, our memories, our very identities were the currency the house demanded. As night deepened, the manor's attacks intensified. Doors slammed shut, trapping us in rooms that shifted mid-breath. Whispers clawed at the edges of our thoughts, sowing doubt and mistrust. Maya's recordings captured sounds beyond human comprehension, wails that bent space and time. Yet amidst the chaos, Jonas's confrontation sparked a fragile hope. His courage reminded us that the manor's hunger could be resisted, even if only momentarily. We began to move as one, combining our strengths, Maya's technology, Leela's visions, my journals, Jonas's protection, to carve out pockets of sanity within this nightmare. But the cost was mounting. Exhaustion gnawed at our edges, and the house's appetite grew ever more insatiable. It knew us now, feeding faster, twisting our memories into weapons against ourselves. I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in a cracked mirror, eyes wide, haunted, but burning with determination. We might not survive this place unscathed, but giving in was no longer an option. We would pay the price, whatever it took, because to live meant to fight the darkness within and without, to face the manor's endless hunger with whatever flicker of light we still possessed. And so, in the heart of the shifting labyrinth, we prepared to stand our ground, each sacrifice a testament to our will to endure. The house might dream, might feed and grow, but we were not yet its prey. But even as hope flickered, I couldn't shake the creeping certainty that survival here demanded more than courage. It demanded a surrender to the very fears we fought to escape, a surrender that might cost us everything. The house was hungry, and it was far from done with us. My journal lay open before me, its pages no longer a simple record, but a cryptic map of shifting symbols and fragmented sketches. Hours of poring over the altered entries had revealed a chilling pattern, a sequence hidden in the manor's architectural madness that repeated like some dark incantation etched into the very bones of this place. Elliot, Maya's voice broke through the silence, shaky but urgent. She hovered near the doorway, her tablet glowing faintly in the gloom. The readings from the last corridor sync with your symbols. It's like the house rearranges itself, following this pattern, a cycle we might predict. I nodded, my fingers trembling slightly as I traced a looping figure on the page. If we can anticipate the shifts, perhaps we can break the cycle, find a way out before it traps us forever. Jonas appeared beside Maya, his broad frame tense, eyes darting nervously as he scanned the shadowed corners. "We can't afford mistakes," he growled. "This place wants us lost, wants us broken." Leela sat nearby, still as a statue, eyes closed, lips murmuring an incantation only she could hear. Her mediumship had become our guide through the manor's labyrinth, her visions a fragile lifeline threading us through memories and illusions. Each whisper from beyond seemed to carve a path in the shifting walls. Dr. Marks and Samir joined us, the former skeptical but visibly strained, the latter clutching his cap as if it anchored him to reality. The atmosphere between us was taut with a desperate hope, mingled with the knowledge that the house was watching, waiting. We moved as one, Maya's tablet lighting our way, Jonas's vigilant presence a shield against unseen threats. The corridors twisted and folded, walls breathing and pulsing like living flesh, but our steps grew surer. The manor's malevolence was no longer a random chaos, but a pattern we could read and, maybe, outsmart. "This way," I whispered, leading the team through a narrow passage that shimmered with spectral light. Leela's voice rose softly in a chant, the air thick with memories of those who had vanished here before us. Fear clung to every surface, but so did determination. In the moments when the manor's grip seemed to falter, when the shifting ceased long enough for us to glimpse a stable path, I felt a flicker of something I had not dared to hope for, freedom. But that hope was fragile. The boundary between what was real and what was remembered blurred further with each step. Faces from my past swirled at the edges of my vision, my sister's smile now twisted by the house's cruelty. The house fed on these memories, growing stronger, but we had found a weakness. Could we break the cycle and escape? Or were we doomed to be lost in the manor's endless nightmare, our memories devoured until nothing remained but fear? I pulled my journal close, the inked symbols glowing faintly in the dim light, and pressed forward. The house was alive, yes, but so were we. And sometimes, even the darkest labyrinth has an exit. "Stay close," I murmured. "Together," Maya replied, her voice steady. And with that, we stepped deeper into the shifting heart of the manor, breaking the cycle or breaking ourselves trying. It was no longer clear where the house ended and our minds began. The boundary dissolved like mist. I found myself wandering a corridor that stretched beyond reason, the walls lined with faded photographs of my sister, her smile ghostly, her eyes shifting with every passing second. The air was thick, weighted with the sorrow I had long buried. The whispers of her laughter and cries intertwined, a haunting lullaby that both comforted and tore at me. I reached out, fingers trembling, to touch the peeling paper, and the images rippled beneath my skin like a living thing. I was pulled into memories I had locked away, a birthday party, a sudden accident, the silence that followed. The house knew. It fed on my grief, distorting it, weaponizing it against me. Behind me, the faintest murmur of voices drew me back. The team was gathered in what should have been the grand parlor, but here the room pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Shadows bent at impossible angles, stretching and contracting like breathing entities. The floor beneath us throbbed like a heartbeat, syncing with the rapid pounding in my chest. Maya's equipment flickered erratically, displaying fragmented images that merged screams, laughter, and silence into a chaotic tapestry of sound and light. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, darted from the readings to the room's ever-shifting contours. Jonah stood by the doorway, broad shoulders tense, eyes scanning the darkness beyond. His usual blunt pragmatism faltered as distorted echoes of his past whispered threats no one else could hear. Leela sat cross-legged on the warped floor, feverishly sketching the spectral figures that danced just beyond the veil. Her hands trembled so violently her pencil threatened to break, yet she could not stop. The anxiety that had always lurked beneath her calm now spilled over, thick and suffocating. The visions she captured on paper seemed to bleed into reality, figures flickering between corporeal and ethereal, blurring the line between the living and the dead. Samir clutched his baseball cap tightly, his youthful face pale and drawn. The technical gear he managed refused to cooperate, screens glitching with static and fractured images. Each beep and distortion chipped away at his resolve, underscoring the house's relentless psychological assault. "We're losing ourselves," Maya whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of broken electronics. "This place, it's warping everything. Our memories, our senses, everything." I nodded, the words hitting like a punch to the gut. We were trapped in a labyrinth, not just of walls and corridors, but of fractured minds and haunting pasts. The manor was alive, a sentient predator feeding on the deepest parts of us, twisting every recollection and fear into a weapon. As I struggled to focus, the corridor behind me began to pulse with a dull red light. The photographs on the walls warped into grotesque parodies, miles twisted into screams, eyes bleeding shadows. I shuddered, the weight of loss pressing down harder than ever before. But with the pain came clarity. To survive, I had to face these memories, not run from them. The house's power lay in our denial, our fear. "Elliot," Lila's voice broke through the haze, soft but urgent. "You need to see this." She held up her latest sketch, a swirling mass of faces and shapes that somehow captured the manor itself, a living maze of trauma and forgotten sorrow. The lines pulsed with energy, and I could feel the oppressive presence coiling around us like a serpent ready to strike. "It's trying to trap us," Maya said, eyes fixed on the malfunctioning monitors. "But if we understand it, maybe we can fight back." The team exchanged wary glances, the fragile cohesion we'd built threatening to unravel under the weight of creeping dread. I took a deep breath, forcing my shaking hands to steady. "We need to remember who we are," I said, voice firm despite the storm raging inside me. "Not just what this house wants us to be." The manor responded immediately. The walls rippled, shadows twisting into faces, some familiar, others monstrous. The air grew thick, the scent of decay and forgotten times filling my lungs. The line between memory, dream, and reality blurred, and I felt myself teetering on the edge of madness. But somewhere beneath the terror, a quiet resolve took root. To escape this place, we had to navigate the echoes of our own minds, confront the ghosts within, and find a way back through the shifting nightmare. As the corridor stretched endlessly ahead, I stepped forward. feeling the weight of every lost memory and every whispered fear pressing in, but also the faintest glimmer of hope flickering in the darkness. The house waited, alive and watching, but I was no longer a passive victim. The battle for our minds had begun, and with it, the fragile thread of survival hung in the balance.